Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Now we're going to be looking at something that has reached worrisome proportions in Nigeria. If you recall, in the course of this week, stories were trending about women who had suffered some kind of domestic and sexual violence. There seems to be a surge, and that was what made the rounds in the course of the week. And well-meaning Nigerians, as well as government, have raised their voices over this disheartening issue, and even the National Assembly had to take a look at this matter in the course of the week. So to discuss this worrying topic with us this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome two people who will be joining us from our studio in Abuja. Funmi Ajare, who is the COO of Helpline Foundation for the Needy. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Martins Obono is a lawyer, and he's also joining us from our studio in Abuja. Lawyer and activist. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And joining us via Zoom is the Executive Director of Women Advocates Research and Documentation.
The session already.
Oh, okay. Once she's ready, we'll bring her on. But we've got these two people in Abuja. And let me start with Funmi. Funmi, what would you say is responsible for the rise in cases of rape around the nation?
The increasing rate of rape that we have is primarily due to the awareness that people now have on the need to speak up when it happens. I do not think that the incidents, the rape incidents, are new. It has been happening. It's just that people do not come out to speak when it happens because of the stigmatization they are worried they will face in the society. They go to law enforcement, they go to police, they are unable to get justice, they are even embarrassed when they try to report rape incidents. But I think people are beginning to come out, people are beginning to advocate, and they are being listened to. I will not, some people have tried to attribute it to the lockdown, the coronavirus pandemic, and all of that. Gender-based violence has deep-rooted sittings in our society. It's just now that people are beginning to get their voices and speak up. We don't know what may be responsible for the new surge that has had death, the rapists killing their victims and all of that. But for sure, rape is not a new thing in our society. It's just that now people are beginning to speak up more about it.
Coming out to speak about it. What has changed?
The media has been very instrumental to amplifying the voices of rape victims. Social media, traditional media, I think they are beginning to give more support to rape victims. Sometimes people just need to see one person do something, and then they will follow suit. Last year, we had high-profile cases. We had Busola Dakolo coming out fearlessly and telling her story. And I think that inspired a lot of people. That inspired a lot of families to want to come out with the stories of their own children, wives, or even daughters. Because previously, before now, a child gets raped, a girl gets raped, and it's even her family that is saying, let's just tone down on the number of people that will get to know about this because we don't want to be embarrassed and all of that. First, stigmatization is beginning to fade away. People are beginning to understand that it is not the fault of the victim, So there is no point stigmatizing. We still have, in our communities, we still have people being stigmatized, but then I think stigmatization has greatly reduced, and this has helped people to come out and share their experiences. And when you've now had these rapists go really violent to the extent of killing people, what's that? You cannot hide it anymore. It has taken a new dimension. It's a new level right now that we face. So you cannot hide it anymore. The people in authority just need to come out and respond to the new wave because it's a pandemic as well. Let me put it that way, of the rape pandemic. We just need to come out. Society needs to come out. Government needs to come out. Organizations need to come out and respond to the new wave of this rape pandemic.
Thank you, Fumi. Thank you. Let me bring in Martin at this point. Martin, do you think that the men are getting more courage to do this because there isn't adequate punishment? Okay, last year, government introduced the sex offenders register, which in other climes is a big thing. You are a registered sex offender, you cannot even get employment. When you move into a neighborhood, the whole neighborhood knows that you have arrived and you are a sex offender. That is in other places. But in Nigeria, rapists seem to get away with it. So it looks like men think it's their right to forcefully have sex with women when they wish.
Okay, so I think basically the problem has to do with the criminal justice system and how the laws surrounding rape and from the point of reporting, investigation, and also prosecution. So I won't really want to talk about what emboldens the men, because that has to do with a lot of individual differences, but I'd rather talk about the system and how it also kind of aids and emboldens people to perpetrate this heinous crime. So my points will be, first of all, what are the laws that are made, that are put in place for people to be able to report rape cases or abuses? Now, if you call women, most women are not bold enough to come out to the police to tell them that they've been raped. So they tend to rely on other mediums. So they can talk to a friend, they can call, some even come on social media to vent and to rant, or to call out their abuser. So the problem is, why do people not feel so comfortable to go to law enforcement as their first point of call, to lay their to nail their accuser? Now, if we are able to resolve that problem, so it first of all has to do with the fact that we still operate a Victorian law in our society, where they tell you, for you to prove rape, you have to go to the hospital, you have to go to the police, tell the police takes you to the hospital, get a medical examination, and do all that. Now, what that automatically does is, a lot of people who have been raped or sexually abused become so traumatized. They get to react in a different form, where they first of all begin to withdraw. They also begin to feel ashamed of themselves. They don't trust anybody. They don't want to talk to anyone. And so when these things happen, the duration for which they ought to have reported to the police and the time they ought to also have gone to get a medical examination would have elapsed. So automatically that makes that whole process very, very difficult to even prove a rape allegation. All right. So if we now can find a room, or we can find a point where we can agree to say, okay, this process is archaic. So can we begin to consider just testimonies? You know, they tell you if somebody is, if you're even going to be sexually assaulted or abused, you have to show evidence that your clothes were torn. There are a lot of people who abuse women who don't need to rip off their clothes. Even at the point of the Violence Against Act, Section 1 of the Violence Against Act, it says that consent, once consent is withdrawn, you know, it's a continuing act. So if you say at any point, wherever you're having sex with somebody, and the person says, I'm no longer interested, please stop, At that point, you have got to stop. If you continue, it is already rape from that point. So how do we begin to make laws and the point of proving rape to make people have more confidence to say, okay, if I've been raped 2 years ago because I have withdrawn, I have been sorrowful, I have been traumatized and all that, but all this evidence that has been put in place, I no longer have them. How can the police now begin to prove that? Then number two is the level of training. I understand that Nigerian police is very overwhelmed and underfunded. I understand that, and we all know the problems. But we need to begin to get law enforcement officers who are trained to understand these issues, to respond to rape issues. A law enforcement officer that does not understand these issues will not be able to respond to them. So we need to have a special, dedicated kind of arm of the police force, just as they have the criminal investigation department and other departments. So the gender department of the Nigerian police needs to be expanded to various states, various local governments, and various divisional police offices. So that when you have somebody, so this problem begins from the point of police college. How do we train our law enforcement officers to understand and respect the rights of women? How do we begin to educate them about these issues of gender-based violence and sexual violations that go on? So that a woman sees a police officer and does not think that when she tells him her story, he will first laugh at her and ask her, why were you there? Why did you wear these skimpy clothes? You enjoyed it. Even if you've had a sexual encounter with somebody in the past, and you now go again to have a different non-consensual encounter, that does not mean, that means rape, you know. So at every point in time, a police officer should not tell you, or a law enforcement officer should not tell you, oh, but you are girlfriends now, you've had sex with this person before, and that means the second time you consented to it. It's not done like that, because if we begin to talk about that aspect, it will be difficult to also prove rape and also make people come out to get justice for their from the law enforcement and from the system against their abusers. So we need to look at trainings for the law enforcement. We also need to look at the factors that are involved in proving rape. And we need to begin to amend it. So I really don't believe in stiffer sentences. Because the reason I don't believe in stiffer sentences is because at the end of the day, if somebody has committed an offense and a sexual violence offense, and you say they should.
Martins, I will just have to butt in here to introduce our other guests. So we'll get back to you. Abiola Akiode Afolabi is the Executive Director of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center. She's a rights activist as well. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
This matter, well, I don't want to say this period. It looks as if it's trending over and over again, and it came to the fore after a 22-year-old Uwa Omozoa was raped and killed in Benin City, and then the other young lady, Tina, in Lagos. But there have been some other cases. Now, Alera asked Martins a question earlier, or it wasn't Martins, she asked Fumi the question here, why it seems as if this whole thing came out again to the fore. It's always been there, but somewhat in the background. And Martins was asked, what if stiffer punishment will make any difference, will deter those who are perpetrators? But you have been involved in this conversations for quite a while. What do you think would make the difference?
Well, I think there are a whole lot of issues, and we need to look at this issue of rape holistically. For me, when she was talked about rape during lockdown period. Yes, I would say that from the work that we do, there was an increase, not only for rape, but also for other forms of violence against women. And during the lockdown period, because you are being locked down with an abuser that now does not go to work, has to be with you for 24 hours. So from the data that we're collecting as civil society, we have noticed that there seems to be some form of increase. Now, to go back to the issue of rape, I think that there are a whole lot of things that we need to put into consideration. The first issue is whether we need to whether the government actually see the issues of this violence as a priority issue. And why I'm asking that is that even in terms of putting in resources, to address gender-based violence, the government has actually not done enough. There are a whole lot of things that we can do in terms of investing in prevention. There are also a whole lot of things that we can do in terms of responses. And from what I can see as someone who's on the field, we have really not done much in that regard. In terms of prevention, neither have we done much in terms of addressing gender-based violence. If you look at Lagos, for example, there is only one shelter in the entire Lagos, in Lagos. That we don't have shelter. There is no government shelter that responds to issue of food. So there are a whole lot of things. That's why I said we need to look at it holistically. Now, coming back to the survivors of rape, there are so many issues. One is the issue of survivors blaming. Everybody asks you questions. When you get to the police asks, what are you wearing? Where did you go? Why did you go there? And all that kind of thing. And what that helps to do is that it further demobilize the person who really wants to come and report rape. So in terms of reporting rape, we have a whole lot of challenges. We need to invest in training who respond to rape survivors who come across to them. For us that we do this work, there are a whole lot of problems with the police. When the police complain, I saw the PPR were talking about evidence. But before we even get to the level of evidence, when people get to police station, they face very harrowing experiences. There's a case in Kaduna that I had to call in SAN this morning. The people were gang raped, and a young lady went on social media to say that they were trying to collect money, from the family of the person that was gang raped. And the next thing that she is being threatened to be arrested. So there are a whole lot of ways that people are even discouraged to come and report. So in terms of people even getting the issue out there, the government is not helping, whether at the level of the police or at the level of the general responses. So there is also the issue of self-blame. You want to blame yourself, especially because you are not getting the kind of response that you are expected to get, from the community. Why did I do it? Maybe I should have gone there. And of course, what that will do is to reduce your ability to be able to report. So these are some of the issues. Now, in terms of laws, as we speak today, about 12 states have passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law. And that law is supposed to address the issue of rape, and it provides for maximum punishment. So my point is that even with the law that we have, the getting that justice, we have not been able to. So it's not about whether the law is strict enough or not. My point is that the road to justice is very rough. People are not even getting justice based on the law that we have. So that's why the question of castration or capital punishment becomes an issue that we need to consider, because even as it is now, people are not getting the desired punishment that is even in the ZWAP law. How many cases have we been able to go through to the end in the country? So these are some of the issues. So they are very fundamental. That's why I'm thinking that there is a need for us to be very holistic, to look at prevention and also look at responses.
Okay, we'll take a moment. When we come back, we'll look at this matters you've talked about, prevention, responses. How do we handle those who are the issue of stigma, trauma, and then the consequences of this violence against sexual violence and all of that. We'll take that in a moment. Do stay with us.
Mr. Hosea Egon is a widowed security man who makes 22,000 naira a month while raising his 2 daughters alone in Pape. In 2017, his world came crashing down when he came back from work and discovered his 2 daughters, who were just 9 and 13 years old at the time, had been raped by his landlord, who till today is still missing.
No, I went to Human Rights Commission, I went to NAPTIP, I went to gender units. As I'm talking to you, nothing. Human Rights Commission, the petition Inspector General of Police, which they transferred the case from Pape to CID office. which they invite me for CID office, they take my statement, take the children's statement. Up to now, the only thing they were telling me, who will sponsor this case? And I didn't have that money.
The impact this tragedy has had on Hosea's family is unimaginable, but he finds the courage to survive through help from civil society organizations such as these ones, who are demanding justice from the police for over 80 women who've been raped across Nigeria since January of 2020. Cases of gender-based violence in Nigeria are constantly in the news, but convictions are very few.
We have, over time, discovered that a lot of cases touching on rape and sexual abuses of women fail essentially because the crime scenes are mismanaged. Once you mismanage the crime scene and the key evidence that are essential in establishing the crime and obtaining a successful prosecution of the suspect is lost, the investigation will run into murky waters.
The demand for justice by these protesters is taken to the National Assembly.
Violence against persons prohibitions and the Child Rights Act and the domestication of both. I'm aware that well over about 20-something states are yet to domesticate. So we as a House, as a House, a federal House, are going to take that initiative to the states. I intend to write and communicate with all the speakers of all 36 states for them to be proactive on this particular piece of legislation.
The lockdown affords abusers both opportunity and access to their victims, especially with domestic violence and sexual offenses. It is pertinent to note that to get justice for any gender-based violence, you must preserve the greatest evidence of all, your body. Kayla Nagwa, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. We're discussing ending domestic and sexual violence, and we have discussing with us Funmi Ajari and Martins Obong in our Abuja studio, and Abiola Akyode Afolabi joined us from Okota in Lagos. Let me come back to you, Martins. When Abiola was talking, she talked about prevention and addressing the matter. But do you think the evidence system, the system of providing evidence for the handling of these cases is a hindrance to dealing with these matters in court?
I believe so. I believe so strongly, because the way the Evidence Act is configured, or rather passed or made, is because it's too cumbersome. You cannot make laws to fit a particular person or to embolden the perpetrators, because to the best of my knowledge, that's what happens. And then without taking into consideration the survivors, because I actually don't like calling them victims because they are survivors. Now, you don't make laws that do not take the survivors' state of mind into consideration. So we have to go back to that law and amend it and begin to make room for post-traumatic stress disorder. We need to make room for people who have gone through trauma, who have gone through withdrawal syndrome, who even have attempted to kill themselves for what it's not their, I mean, for what you cannot blame them for, you know. So we need to go back to that law and see how we can amend it and make it open, at least, to accommodate people who are unable to run to the police immediately, or who are unable to run to the hospital to get medical examination. So that has to actually be taken into cognizance as we begin to consider the fact that this is getting too rampant in our society.
Funmi, let me bring you in. It is said that a rape victim lives with that trauma for the rest of their lives. You are in the business of helping out people like this who have suffered this kind of abuse. What exactly would you say to a person who has gone through this to help them heal? How do you help them heal?
Really, it's very difficult to talk to them. Words really cannot help them out of what they face. One thing that helps for sure is for, like Martin said, is for the survivor to see that her perpetrator, the person that perpetrated this violent act against her or him, is being brought to book. Justice is the first thing that needs to that we need to have if a survivor has to heal. People go through our psychologists that talk to some of these victims. They are trained, of course, yes, but they also understand that like he said, post-trauma therapy is very important as it is. As important as it is, the victim will not heal if she does not get justice. Knowing that you've been raped and the person who raped you is roaming around the street and probably even raping more people will not bring you to a place of healing. We have people who have been raped and were not able to come out until 20 years after. Why this? Because every day they wake up and they see the person who raped them on screen. You wake up and then the little girl walks out of the street and she sees the man who owns that shop that has raped her. You have taken away her dignity. You have taken away her peace. Healing is very difficult when justice is not served. And that's why for us, we keep calling for stiffer punishment for perpetrators. Because really, the way I know the other people with me, Biola and Martins, have spoken extensively on the lapses that we have in our justice system. We need to train first responders, people at the gender desk. I understand that the law makes provisions for every police unit to have a gender desk. But it's very shocking when you go to a police station and then you're asking a rape victim if she enjoyed it or not, and all of those other questions. Do you want to ask the little girl that is in diapers? We've had stories, we've had incidences of toddlers, of babies being abused. Do you want to ask these young children, these little children, if they enjoyed it? Do you want to ask them what the color of their diaper was or how short their diaper was? No, I think it's time. Desperate situations call for desperate measures. I think it is time that we have stiffer punishment for rape victims and we have training for first responders. And for the victims, we need more trauma centers. CSO, NGOs, we're doing a lot working with these people. We talking with some of them daily. We even sometimes have to relocate them from the environments where they've been abused to new environments. It's part of the process. But these are very expensive things to do when we know that we could take the easier path. First, put in place stiffer punishments. This will serve as deterrence for those abusers out there. Really, it will.
Abiola, let me read out this tweet by Professor Imonuka Nakena. He talks two different things here. He says, first, the laws on sexual harassment and rape in Nigeria must be strengthened. Sex predatory is criminal in the UK. Rape and sexual offenses carries a severe penalty for convicts, and convicts are registered on sexual offenses register for life, and its penalty is up to 25 years. That's in the United Kingdom and in some other climes that we're aware of. He also says rape and sexual violence depict mental weakness, and the act is akin to a psychomaniac. It's egregious that some sex perverts have gone unpunished because of the law trivialized it as typical of sexual misdemeanor. Abiola, in the quest to prevent, the stiff penalties that Fumi's talked about, I know Martin said it's not a steep penalty thing that will make a difference. The steep penalties and education, would that make a difference?
Well, education is very important. Now, if we look at the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the penalty there is life imprisonment. So that's the point that I'm raising about. And I guess the worry about life imprisonment is that someone someday can come and give a pardon, and the person, leaves the prison. But life imprisonment is also it's also maximum in a way. So for me, it's also stiff. But the point is that how many people are getting life imprisonment, and as compared to the 20 years that you talked about with the United Kingdom. So for me, it's the punishment is there, but we don't even get people to get justice to that, regard, to be able to get the life imprisonment. And how many people, even get to that level because of some of the things that we have talked about this morning, some of the issues around evidence and the kind of questions, and the fact that there's a need for a general reorientation of the people, which is why you're talking about education. From the gender units, from police gender units, we see that there's a lot of they don't have the adequate capacity, to be able to deal with the issue. And that's why I say that if as a country we really want to do this, we must be ready to put in resources. Resources, if you look at countries where they are dealing with this gradually, these are countries where they're ready to put resources to train police, to have like a specialized police setup, which was the intention of the gender unit, that are already trained, that can easily respond, to the issue of gender-based violence. That will not be asking you the kind of question, or that will not want to behave like the normal police behavior, where they ask for money for files and things like that. So we need to have that kind of specialized police, and we're also asking for specialized courts. And let me take Lagos, for example. There's been a lot of development in Lagos of recent in addressing issues of rape and other sexual violence. For example, they have the Mirabel Center. So if someone is raped and they come to our office, we would call the Mirabel Center and we ask the person to go to Mirabel Center, where they're going to do some kind of health, physical, they will do some kind of physical assessment and all of that, and they refer them to police. And in that regard, because there's somebody who is also following up, you see the police reacting more, and doing what they are supposed to do in that system. But we don't have that kind of system everywhere. We only have in Lagos. And of course, if you look at Lagos too, Mirabel Center is only situated in Ikeja. Lagos is as big as we have 20 million people. In the last 4 years, Mirabel Center had actually responded to about 5,000 rape cases. So you can imagine, how big this issue is. And that's why I think that the first thing we need to do as a government is to take it as a serious issue. And that's why we're asking for a declaration of state of emergency, where we don't only just speak about state of emergency, where we also speak about the need to put resources and put personnel to be able to address people who can understand, psychologists who can understand the issue of rape, who can understand the issue of sexual violence, that can deal with it. Now, on the issue of education, that's very important. The National Orientation Agency must also bring this as part of their curriculum, part of what they do when they go and discuss the issue of value system, because it also has to do with our value system. The impunity that goes around with rape further make rape like an acceptable thing in our community. So there's a need for a value reorientation. So, and we can start from secondary school, talking to young boys. We start from the home, so everybody. So that's why I said it's a...
Oh dear. Oh, we seem to have lost Abiola there.
We'll definitely get back to her.
Let me bring Fumi back in because of some very worrying statistic that we hear, that in cases of juvenile rape, most of those who actually rape the little girl are family members, and the people who are known to the child, an uncle, a brother, her father, a friend of the family. So how does one deal with this when even a child's parent is ready to rape her? or her brother or her uncle?
Thank you. I know Abiola just spoke about education. Education, it doesn't start from secondary school. It starts from the moment a child can identify her body parts. It's unfortunate that perpetrators are found even in the families. But like I say, a child, a young girl, a young boy is very comfortable with this family member. Do you expect her to carry her pepper spray or whatever it is that we're calling for? Do you expect her to carry it around even in her own home? It is only when we strengthen prosecution, when we strengthen our justice system, that we can actually bring this national emergency to a halt. If the perpetrator, because the person who is going to be abused, the victim oftentimes does not even expect this person to rape her. She does not expect this person to come molest her, touch her body parts or his body parts. So she's not in any way prepared for it. But the perpetrator can be prepared for it if he or she knows that there is a very stiff punishment awaiting me if I am caught in this act. It will go a long way in solving this crisis that we have in our hands. Why these people are comfortable abusing juveniles especially is because they know that nothing will come out of it, nothing will be done. I saw a very worrisome video of a man, just yesterday, somebody sent it to us on social media, actually explaining to some other guys how he abused a 12-year-old in his shop. He's saying it, there was a point where he even made a statement where somebody said, if police, he said, who won't arrest me? And that is the effrontery, that is the boldness they have. Who won't arrest me? Yes, even if they arrest me, if we reach station, we go settle. You know, and all of those things. Abiola asked that we have special units already responding. We have, every station is supposed to have a gender desk. But what we need to do is to make sure that those gender desks are manned by professionals. We have people who have gone to school to study psychology, sociology, and all of that. They can have further training specifically for this, manning this gender desk, manning the response to this situation. It's not something that anybody can handle, because if you're telling somebody who is not even progressive thinking, somebody who does not even grasp, who does not even have an understanding of the problem, to just come and take statements of a person that has been abused, that's what leads to questions like, you enjoy them, waiting you wear, why you go there, you know, and all of those things. I am still insisting, our position at the Helpline Foundation, based on the cases that we've had to attend to, is that stiffer punishment, if we have to go to the maximum, people have called for castration, there are medical procedures to do this. If we have to demand for that, I think the time that we should do that is now. Because no matter what the victim does, your abuser, knowing fully well that he's going to get away with it and there is nothing that is going to stop him, will continue to abuse people until we have put stiffer measures in place to deter these people. This thing is going to continue to increase every day. Just this morning, somebody sent another report, so I was not even able to really read it and attend to it. But it keeps, you know, it's really disheartening anyway. It keeps increasing. Our justice system must be worked on. We need stiffer punishments. We need stiffer punishments for rapists and abusers.
Martins, the practicality of this, what's the way forward in practical terms?
So the way forward is for us to go back to the National Assembly and amend the Evidence Act and how evidence is admissible in rape issues. That's number one. The number two practical issue will be, I know that the current IG is very passionate about gender and rape issues, and we must commend him for that, but he needs to take take more steps forward in terms of training. And I say training because it's very important. A police officer must understand the gravity of what sexual and gender-based violence is. A police officer must understand the magnitude and the damage that causes in the lives of survivors. So we need to go back to the police college from the point of recruitment to let them know what happens. And if you're working on the street, and I'm not even going to reduce this to just saying we need to put it on the gender-based desk. We need to train every police officer on how to handle this issue. They have to at least have the basic training on how to handle these issues. Number two is also the point of collecting evidence, as well as even the point of interviewing the complainant or the survivor. How do the police make this person feel comfortable, relaxed enough to say her ordeal? Because what she probably, or him, because there are cases where now men are also being violated.
Martin, permit me to interrupt you here. We'll just take a quick break. We'll come back to tidy up this conversation. We'll also need to look at what role can the family play in all of this, and other institutions like the religious and traditional institutions. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us.
The International Center for Investigative Reporting in December of 2019 quoted the Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Pauline Tarlin, as giving the figure of rape cases in Nigeria at 2 million every year. But the latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics states that 2,279 cases of rape were reported to the police in 2017. The outcry against the alleged rape and murder of Uwaila Omozuwa is still hot, and now there is a fresh reported case in Niger State. Two sisters are alleged to have been raped by their own father.
It started when he said it was his friend who told him that if he do that, if he sleep with us, he's going to draw us close to himself. When he said the first time, I went to Benin because I don't wanted to come back. When I came back, I thought maybe he has stopped the thing he is trying to exhibit. When he asked at the first time, I accept because he said he was drunk that night.
The suspect has his own side of the story.
I did not do it intentionally. I was drunk that day that I have a misrealized and intercourse with one and then those two.
That will not be all in the same state. Another suspect is in detention for raping his own 85-year-old grandmother.
A lokacin da muka je gidansu.
My friends and I took some alcohol and I slept off. Shortly after, we heard gunshots and people scampered to safety. I ran into the room of my grandmother. She was sleeping, so I went and held her.
He claimed he was doing that purposely to get money because he had no money. And above all, he was drunk. He was under the influence of drugs, and that pushed her into it. But by and large, that is not acceptable.
For some people, indecent dressing is a major factor contributing to rape. But how indecently dressed could an 85-year-old woman be for a 25-year-old man to want to have carnal knowledge of her? From the Niger State Police Command Headquarters in Mina, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. Anybody said, our leaders will never take this issue seriously until the data sheet starts rolling out. Just like the virus pandemic, let everyone understand how serious this issue is. It should also be narrowed down to the grassroots for everyone. Again, Pamela Ugweze says, stiffer punishment alone will not suffice. We need value reorientation. Anyway, Nigeria, media and everyone should be involved in spreading this message. Rape is a violent act and a crime against humanity. Rape here being male against female, female against male, male against male, female against female.
No, that was a disgusting story.
It did, indeed.
85-year-old woman?
That he was under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
No excuse will suffice.
I don't know if...
I mean, for me, that's the kind that should be castrated.
I dare say that. I don't know if Abiola is back with us, but for me, let's look at what role can the family, the religious institutions, not just the social institutions, what role can they play to prevent this issue?
Okay, thank you. I think we need to go back to the basics. Information, information, and information. Now, when it's time for elections, we have campaign trains in every community, no matter how rural, because you want to get their votes. This is a national emergency and the government needs to declare it as such. Community leaders, families, everybody needs to be involved in this. If we need to go out there the way it is done during elections, the local way, go to the markets, share flyers, tell them if this happens, call this number in your community. If this happens, talk to this person in your community. While doing that, you must also make sure that the person you're asking them to talk to is ready to respond appropriately, is ready to respond and do what is right. I think it's going to be a good place for us to start. The family also have a role to play because we've been asking, did these men who have been raping, did they fall from the sky? No. They were born into families. They were raised in communities. They were raised in homes. The way we raise our children need to change. The conversations we have with our children need to change. We must let these children understand from the cradle that the dignity of another person is very important. While they try to preserve their own dignity, they must preserve the dignity of others. This way they will understand that violating somebody's body by violating somebody's body, you are defiling her dignity. But then if we want to look at it, we must, it's very complicated because you may ask that, what has government done to preserve people's dignities? Because I am looking at I'm just having a mental recollection of some of the pictures I've seen of the children that were abused. 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds hawking on the streets, and then they were dragged in Kano and raped by a 50-something-year-old man. If the government had made sure, if community had made sure that those little girls were not out there hawking, we would probably have been able to protect them. We need, like I said, it still boils down to our laws. The Child Rights Act must be, I'm glad that the speaker said he's going to begin to engage once again with with speakers of state houses of assemblies. But first, every state needs to domesticate the Child Rights Act. Children need to be children. They cannot be out there trying to fend for their families. We are exposing them to predators. And then conversations that we have with them to educate them will also help them know when somebody, a known family member, is about to abuse them. There is so much that needs to be done.
Let's get Martins to weigh in on this real quick. Prof says university campuses nationwide must set up anti-rape units to sensitize students about respect and decorum for both sexes, and that rape and violence must be abhorred. Most predators started from the campuses. Because nothing happens, they become emboldened as master predators. Martins, in a few seconds.
Because we're winding down now.
Okay, so I totally agree with that particular submission because at the end of the day, we need to begin to teach young people, and that is especially from institutions and schools. That's where you find these people. And we need to begin to teach them the culture of care and respect. So how do you respect a woman? How do you respect her choices? How do you care about a woman? So the question of who then is my neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself. If you violate somebody, would you like someone else to violate you? So the whole idea of having a country and a people that care for one another and protect each other is very, very important. And that is the value system that I expect that our leaders, at both from the local communities to the political leaders, to religious leaders, to parents, to older siblings, need to teach the younger ones, and also discuss it amongst themselves, that we need to care for each other. We need to care about each other. You don't look at the other person just as another person, but you need to look at the other person as your own and begin to respect those people and do things that will not directly hurt and inflict pains or harm on other people. So the idea of teaching the culture of care, needs to be the value of human lives and the values of care as a society. We need to bring that back into our culture and even into our national life, because that's the point where people will begin to respect the values and respect decisions of the opposite sex.
Okay, Biola, we just have enough time to take your parting shot.
She couldn't reconnect.
Oh dear, sorry about that. We couldn't reconnect with Biola, so that's where we just have to weigh anchor for today, as they say. Thank you very much. This has been a very interesting conversation, and we have by no means exhausted all the issues. This conversation continues after this, and it's just for me to thank Funmi Ajare, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer, Helpline Foundation for the Needy, who joined us from Abuja, as well as Mr. Martins Obodo, who's a lawyer and rights activist, who also joined us from our studio in Abuja. You all keep up the good work, and I'm sure that in a few years we'll be singing a different song, because this has been brought to the fore, and there are so many cases now that everyone is seeming to pay attention to this.
Just before we go, this came in from Abdul Rashid Lawal. He says, may I suggest we dwell on prevention of rape by reducing the free interactions of males and females, restricting the sale of alcohol and other intoxicants, especially in public. My second point is, how do we prevent false accusations? And he says, thank you, I say no to rape. That is Abdul Rashid Lawal.
Thank you. Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do remain with us.